We are back to another episode of the Train Well podcast, where we inspire you to move more, to get stronger, and have fun. Today we got Farrah, trainer Farrah, back. She is an RD and she's ready to talk about nutritional needs for perimenopause. Let me tell you a little bit about Farrah real quick. She spent 18 years, folks, in the fitness and nutrition industry, okay? She graduated with her associates in exercise science. She became an ACE certified personal trainer in 2007. She went back to school for more information on nutritional sciences, and she graduated with her BS in 2020. She got her RD state certification, and she specializes mainly in insulin resistance and diabetes, but she is a pro with perimenopause. So again, stay tuned.
Yeah, she was such a pro. Oh my gosh, she broke it down for us. We talked through what are the hormonal changes during perimenopause, how can your nutrition support that, what people should be focusing on in terms of the macronutrients they should be eating, so proteins, fats, and carbs. She broke down the micronutrients, what you might consider supplementing with. This was a fantastic episode. I learned so much from her. We even talked about gut health, how to improve your gut health, and how to get the most out of your nutrition at this time.
We hope you guys enjoy this as much as we do. Stay tuned.
So happy, Farrah, to have you back on. I've personally been waiting for this day to have you back because we had such an amazing conversation the first time. And I think you are still one of our most highly listened episodes from when we had you on. So we're lucky to have you back. And today we're talking about perimenopause. This is episode 3 in our 4-part series on perimenopause. And we're diving into nutrition. And of course, Farrah, you're a registered dietitian as well. So we wanted to get your take on, how should women be eating during perimenopause and what should they be considering when it comes to nutrition? So if you could just start us off kind of breaking down briefly, what are the changes happening in a woman's body once they're in perimenopause? So it doesn't happen at the same age for everyone, but we're thinking around 40 plus is when it maybe starts. So what are the hormonal changes happening, and what are the body composition changes that are happening?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for having me. I absolutely love both of you guys. I was so excited when you asked me to come back on. So thank you. And let's dive in. So a couple of the things that, everybody's different, like you mentioned, and it can literally start happening in your mid-30s. They're starting to see more often, but a lot of people report some similar symptoms, such as decreased, well, I shouldn't say decreased because it's kind of all over the place, but your progesterone, your estrogen is kind of crazy. You start to see like more estrogen decline. When that happens, because estrogen is a huge component of building muscle, we start to lose muscle. What happens when we lose muscle? Our metabolism starts to slow down, where, our metabolism is a little bit less efficient. And so you start to see maybe a little bit of gradual weight gain, a little bit of insulin sensitivity issues like dysregulation. So what that means is you're not responding to carbs the same way. Your appetite regulation is kind of off. Body temperature, like you'll hear about things like hot flashes and things like that, because your hypothalamus and your brain is kind of off, just a whole bunch of hormone disruption. So yeah, you can imagine it kind of looks different for everybody. And the most frustrating part is it's very understudied, I would say women just in general, right? In the medical field we're understudied. And so we're kind of learning new things about perimenopause all the time. That's kind of like the gist of it.
Yeah, that was perfect. Thank you.
You mentioned how estrogen plays such an important role in muscle. Mm-hmm. Does it affect fat distribution at all too? Is that a piece we have to worry about?
Yeah, absolutely. What you see is your body starts not knowing how to distribute fat the same way that it used to. It's less efficient. And so it starts accumulating around the midsection. So you see a lot of fat distribution in the midsection. That coupled with crazy cortisol levels, which happens during perimenopause, and all the things I just mentioned. So yeah, absolutely, definitely see that during that time.
Yeah, and I think like that can be, there are so many perimenopausal symptoms, and we talked about a lot of them in part 1 and part 2 of this series, where it's like anything from like joint pain to mood swings to everything in between. But I think particularly this unexplained weight gain is really challenging for women because we have been, as you know, Farrah, like brainwashed to believe that we need to be lean and thin and have zero belly fat whatsoever. And so when we're starting to see, and we've already spent our whole life trying to maintain this like trim figure, and now we're starting to see more of this weight distributed around our midsections, it creates a lack of confidence. Women are starting to feel like, I'm not recognizing my body anymore. I feel uncomfortable. I don't feel as confident, and I don't feel as strong, and I don't want to, like, maybe it's affecting even their relationship with their partners because they're not confident. So I think we could get into the nitty gritty a little bit. And first of all, confidence is an internal game for sure. But how can women start eating and focusing on nutrition to just start feeling good in their bodies again? If you could give like an overview, and then we can kind of dive deeper.
Yeah. So interestingly enough, I generally approach women who are going through that phase in their life the same way I would approach somebody who is insulin resistant, or dare I say even diabetic. Now, obviously there's some differences, but as I mentioned before, we start to see a disruption in our insulin sensitivity. And so the best thing to do is keep your blood sugar nice and stable during that time. So, and we can kind of jump into a lot of, once we get there, the misconceptions and intermittent fasting and kind of skipping meals and things like that, that can be really detrimental for wanting to see specific progress or feeling a certain way. So what you kind of want to focus on is keeping that blood sugar nice and regular. And obviously protein is key. Now, that is also something that on all of my clients, that's what we want to focus on, but it is especially important during perimenopause to be able to keep that lean muscle mass and even put on more lean muscle mass, because it is possible to do during this time. So keep your protein nice and high. You want to have good fiber, good amount of fiber. So I would say in between 25-30 grams a day. That is very important for gut health and digestion, and, again, keeping your blood sugar nice and regular. So those are the two things I would say to really focus on. Now, when I talk about blood sugar and how I mentioned with my insulin resistant clients and diabetic patients, all the same approach. Eat frequently, eat within 30 minutes. I would say max an hour after waking up. Try to eat every 2 to max 4 hours. I would say 3 hours would be like a sweet spot, and try to do that throughout the day, keeping your protein high in every meal, and just really keeping that energy nice and steady. That's where we would start.
That's a great overview. And I'm curious what Joey's thinking, because like I want to dive into like how much protein should we be getting. Let's talk about intermittent fasting. Joey, do you want to go there right now? Like,
well, can I talk about blood sugar management? Because I think that's key. And like, because blood sugar, we know, like carbohydrates, right, and glucose. And so like, can we, like, because most people like are super afraid of carbs. We talked about that last episode. But are carbs important? And if so, when should we eat them? What kind of carbs should we eat? Like, are we talking Pop-Tarts and frozen pizza? Or are we talking like sweet potatoes and spaghetti squash? Like, give us the lowdown on carbs and how they can control blood glucose.
Yeah, so carbs are not the bad guy. And we talked about this the last time I was on the podcast. We love carbs. Carbs are good. Let's throw away all of that crazy rhetoric that carbs are bad, because we do, even if you are diabetic or insulin resistant, you still need to have those carbs. So yeah, they're great to have, but we do need to be a little bit more intuitive. Not intuitive, I guess. Intentional. Yeah. You want to be a little bit more intentional about which kind of carbs. Now, obviously, we're going to have those days where we have Pop-Tarts and we have ice cream and those things, and that's totally okay. Same thing, when you're in perimenopause, it's okay to have things in moderation. Try to be more aware and to pair those types of things with protein. because that will help so that your blood sugar isn't just spiking through the roof. If you do have the protein, it slows it down. So sometimes I do have Pop-Tarts. I actually love Pop-Tarts, and I'll have them with like a protein shake, or even I'll have like a half a serving of Pop-Tart and I'll have like Greek yogurt that's like high in protein. So there's ways that we can have those things, but ideally we want to try to focus on having low glycemic and fiber rich carbohydrates. So that would look like sweet potatoes, like you mentioned, steel cut oats, quinoa, berries are even on that list, apples, lentils, things like that, high in fiber as well. The other stuff that's high glycemic, so it's quicker, we use that energy quicker. Let's keep those around our active times in the day during this time, during perimenopause. Keep it around your workouts and try to pair it with some protein. That's the best thing that you can do. But overall, let's try to focus on those high fiber, lower glycemic carbs.
Yeah, that's amazing. That is so, so helpful. I would love if women have one takeaway: carbs are not the enemy. Carbs are very important, especially if you've now started strength training. You listen to part 2 of the series and now you're like, okay, strength training is for me. Carbs become even more important. So since we're on the topic of talking about the macronutrients, why don't we just like talk about fats and proteins as well? So we already talked about how like protein needs to be the focus of our meals and our snacks, but how much protein should women be aiming to get? And does it matter if they're not yet doing a strength training program versus if they're more experienced with doing strength training?
I think that can be case by case. I think there was a period of time, especially, and Darian, you'll remember this, like I would say like 10 years ago, everybody was saying, let's do 1 gram per pound of body weight, right? So if you're like a 150-pound person, then you want to have 150 grams of protein every day. That can get really crazy when you're, 200 pounds, 250. That's a lot of protein, right? So, and sometimes it can be overkill, and sometimes we don't utilize that protein once it gets really high, and that high range, we don't utilize it the way that we want to. It's kind of counterproductive. So I usually, when I am helping my patients, my clients, I usually do like 0.7. So instead of 1 gram, it's 0.7 is usually the calculation that I do per pound of body weight. So in the calculator, let's say I'm 150 pounds, I'm going to do 150 times 0.7. It says 105 grams of protein. So I usually say, let's shoot for 105 grams of protein. The more, the better. If you want to get up to the 120, 125, that's fantastic. But let's start bare minimum, especially if they're barely, a lot of the women that come to me are usually sitting like 45, 50 grams of protein a day. So people are just notoriously under eating protein. So I'll usually kind of start them off at that 0.7 mark. If they're already eating high protein, then maybe we bump them up a little bit. But if they're within that range, and I think it's fine to do the 1 gram per pound. I don't think that's too crazy, but per person. But yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of protein, right?
Yeah, but so would you agree that protein isn't just for bodybuilders, like it's for perimenopausal peace of mind, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's so important during this time because we are losing muscle mass. And so the way that we counteract that is we have a lot of protein and we strength train.
Yeah, absolutely. Would you talk to us a little bit about fats now? Do people need to limit their fat intake, or should they be eating healthy fats? And what are healthy fats?
Yeah. This is a huge one too. Do you remember what was it? Was it Atkins?
Atkins.
Or it was
Well,
just like
Atkins was like the low carb, but there was a whole I think for like my entire childhood, we only bought margarine.
fat free. Yeah, margarine. yeah.
Nobody eats margarine anymore.
No, and everything was like fat free, and that's still, I still see that marketed sometimes. But I mean, and I think Atkins was like low carb and low fat and high protein. So crazy. That's crazy because we need to have the fat, especially for our hormones. So perimenopause, I kind of look at it as like a backwards puberty, if that makes sense. We're kind of going backwards, and in order to regulate that and have it go smoothly, we need to have fat in our diet. I would say just the normal calculation everyone says to do is like 25% of your diet. I would say anywhere from like 25 to 40% even with some people. Maybe like 30% is a good sweet spot. But yeah, we need to have it. I mean, that's how we have hormone synthesis in our body. And so cholesterol, that's going to come from our dietary fat, right? That is the backbone of our sex hormones, which are the things that are taking a hit when we're going through perimenopause. I mean, your estrogen, your progesterone, testosterone, cortisol, all of that stuff. And so it's super important to get in a good amount of fat in order to regulate that and have it work for us. So you asked me what kinds. I would say obviously omega 3s. So think of like fatty fish. You can get this in supplement form too, which we'll talk about. But in regards to nutrition, fatty fish, walnuts, flaxseed, things like that. And those are also like very anti-inflammatory and obviously is going to support your hormones. Like avocados, olive oil, egg yolks, things like that. Those are great to have. I mean, avocados alone are such a good form of fiber and they're like hormone building blocks. So if you can eat avocados or you like them, do it. If you can eat one every single day, that would be perfect. Maybe not a whole one, but if you could eat it every day, that'd be perfect.
Have you guys tried adding a avocado to a smoothie?
Yes.
I used to do that for my kids. I personally am not a big smoothie fan, but I make them for my kids so I can like sneak things like avocado and spinach and things in their meals.
Yeah.
I'll try it because it's if the listeners try it. It sounds disgusting, but it's like super creamy and richy.
Yeah.
But anyways, Farrah, I really want to get into supplements, so I'm gonna jump the gun on you, okay? Because we talked about macros.
Yeah.
Let's get into micros, okay? So tell us, give us an overview of what micronutrients are important at this stage.
Okay, just a little bit of backstory. I am not a huge supplement person in general. Like I used to be sponsored by GNC, and when I was sponsored by them, we were really close. They were like my family, and I would get to ask them these nitty gritty questions like, "Do we really need this? What does this do?" You know, all these things. I discovered I wasn't really a huge fan because there's so much marketing and gimmicky stuff out there. And we talked about that in the last podcast. But I do have to say, supplements are pretty important during perimenopause. Obviously, we want to go to food first. Like we want our food to be nutritiously dense for the most part, 80%. That's a great rule. But I do think there are things that we do need to supplement during this time. One of those things being calcium, because it's essential for bone health, especially past your 40s, because that's when we start losing that bone density, which obviously why we should lift weights too, because that really helps. But yeah, calcium, I'd say 1,000 to 1,200 milligrams a day is perfect. Vitamin D. Vitamin D is something that so many of us are deficient in. Where do you guys, Darian, you're in Colorado.
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania.
Joey's in Colorado.
You're in Colorado. Okay. So I'm not sure about Pennsylvania. Like, how's the weather?
It's really, really hot and sunny. But I just learned, right? Even when it's sunny out, you're protecting your skin from the sun. So you're not getting the same sun exposure. So like you probably need to be, would you suggest like supplementing with vitamin D year round?
Even in the summer out here, and I do a lot of yard work, I'm outside a lot, I still have to I'll go get my blood. I just had my blood taken and I'm still deficient in vitamin D, but I haven't been good about taking it. So yes, I think we should all supplement vitamin D, but especially during perimenopause, because it does help your calcium absorption. It helps your mood. I mean, it boosts your immunity. So I do think, vitamin D is one of those things. The next thing I would recommend, this may be my favorite one, and I don't miss taking it. I always take it every single day. Magnesium. It helps me so much with sleep, which is something that I really need. And this is something that a lot of women report struggling with when they're going through perimenopause. So magnesium is really going to help you with your sleep. It's going to help with stress. It's going to help alleviate cramps. It's going to help you with your insulin regulation. It's one of those things that is very beneficial, and like 300 to 400 milligrams a day is a good sweet spot. B vitamins are very important. So like B6, B12, folate, energy, mood, cognitive functions, all of that, super important to supplement during this time. It's actually really good for gut health as well. the B vitamins.
If we could also touch on probiotics.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Oh, what about prebiotics? I heard prebiotics too.
Yeah, I mean, you could. I do recommend, like I said, you can get a lot of your prebiotics and probiotics from your nutrition. But if you're like lactose intolerant like I am, you kind of stay away from dairy. Sometimes it's a little bit harder to do that, but that is very important. Both of those things are important because your gut health, and I think we'll probably jump into this a little bit, your gut health takes a big hit during perimenopause because the estrogen actually regulates how well that is all balanced, right? So if your estrogen's going down, a lot of times you'll hear women talk about how they have stomach aches, they have heartburn, they're getting indigestion, all of these different things, and it's usually because constipation, huge, yes. So yeah, that's an important one. Both of those I would suggest. I think that there's benefits in both of them, especially if you're not doing, dairy and things like that.
Ladies listening, bone health does not it starts in your 40s. It does not start when you break a hip in your 70s.
Right.
So please listen to Farrah, get your calcium.
Yes, calcium's a huge one. And I think that's the number one. That and magnesium are my two. I tell everybody to do that once they hit that perimenopause. I don't think we even talked about what and when constitutes as perimenopause. Did we talk about that? Or is that something that you guys have covered in the series?
We did, but if you want to dive into it, feel free.
It's kind of different for everybody. So I'd be curious to hear what you guys have to say about it. It can happen, and we mentioned this a little bit, like 15 years sometimes before menopause actually happens. What menopause is like 12 months with no period. I think that's when you officially say that. So leading up to that, if you've got crazy erratic periods, you've got kind of the stuff that we talked about, that's when they start to call it perimenopause. And I know that this is early 2000s where we started actually kind of recognizing that this is a thing. So I know that we still have a lot to learn about it.
Yeah. And I mean, but even before your period becomes irregular, you can start experiencing all these symptoms even before that. And it's just so, I mean, in your mid-30s, your hormones are already starting to shift. And it's like you may not be registering that by having symptoms, but the hormones are shifting.
Yeah.
And so maybe the symptoms are manageable. But that's why I'm like, if you're in your mid-30s right now, I mean, honestly, even in your 20s, you can start being preventative right now.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, not that you can prevent menopause, that will happen,
Right.
but in terms of how you're affected by the symptoms.
Yeah.
So it's so important to start whatever age you're at as a woman right now. You could start all of this now to really prepare yourself and kind of, quote unquote, bulletproof yourself for the perimenopause symptoms.
For sure. And I think that was huge. I'm glad that you said that because I do think we can start taking a lot of these, especially the supplements we were just talking about. I mentioned that I'm not a huge supplement person, but during perimenopause I am. I think these supplements that we're talking about, you can start taking those, in your 20s, and that's great. That's just going to set you up. So,
yeah.
And then the next thing, I know I'm all over the place, but I did want to talk about creatine because they're finding there's a lot of awesome studies with creatine and perimenopause, and also with cognitive function as well. That's something that takes a hit during perimenopause and I swear this is where I'm like, am I in perimenopause? Because my thought process sometimes, I'm like, I don't know what it is, but I need to start taking more creatine. Actually, I haven't taken creatine for a couple months, but I'm going to now, especially after jumping back into this. And I've been looking at studies. And it's great for kind of, I don't want to say reversing, but preventing or maybe slowing down mental decline. Some people, obviously, genetics plays a huge role, but some people are going to have that cognitive decline, but there's studies showing that creatine can really help that, can slow it down, or even in some cases, prevent it. So I think it's really good to start incorporating creatine. Not only is it great for lean muscle mass, I think when people hear creatine, they think about bodybuilders, or bros, that's what I used to think back in the day. I'm like, I'm not going to take creatine. I'm going to get bloated, which is a myth. It can cause bloating, but very, very temporary. And not everybody gets the bloating, but it's important. I think that that it helps with that. It helps with your gut health. It's another thing that helps. Like I said, muscle mass and strength. And what I mentioned, memory, brain health, energy. It even helps with hydration. Like it helps you hold on and be hydrated for longer. Anywhere from like 3 to 5 grams a day is a sweet spot for women. Did you have anything to add?
Well, no, that was perfect because I just started taking creatine. And I know it takes a few weeks, right, to until you start noticing some benefit. You have to like take it for, every day for a few weeks to start noticing. But I was just so excited learning about that during perimenopause is such a good time to take creatine because of the cognitive benefits. And when women are complaining about like the brain fog and the mood swings, and your brain is literally affected on a hormonal level by perimenopause. And if we can take something that's going to help mitigate those cognitive symptoms, like why not? And you get the additional benefit, like you said, of like really holding on and developing that lean muscle mass. I am so excited about my new creatine habit.
Wait, question for both of you. Do you guys take monohydrate? Do you take HCl? Do you take a different ester group? What do you guys take?
That's a good question. So I used to only take the HCl because I was told that it was less bloating. I never bloated from the monohydrate in the first place, so I just ended up going back to that. That one's more studied. It's a little bit more reliable, but I mean, I would say just see how you react to it. I don't feel like there's one. I mean, what do you think, Darian? What do you take?
I'm taking the monohydrate and I'm taking 3 grams a day right now, primarily after workouts, but on rest days, I'm just taking it whenever. I have not had a single issue yet. And like you said, it is temporary. And to me, if like I happen to have a little bit of bloating, that's not gonna, for me, the benefits outweigh that. But I have not had any bloating. So
Good.
I'm feeling really good. I'm excited to see, how I feel after a few more weeks.
You'll have to keep me posted on that. I want to jump back on it. That's one of those supplements you don't have to cycle off of it. You can take it every single day and it's still going to give you the benefits. So, but yeah, I think either way, I mean, if you want to go, I would just say, see how your body responds to whatever you choose. But I know that there's more studies done on the monohydrate.
Okay, can we get into gut health now? Because I have a big thing to talk about.
Yeah, what do you want to talk about?
I heard years ago from our strength and conditioning coach that the gut is the second, like, brain pretty much. And there's like this gut brain connection, right? And so I want to talk about that. Like, how important is the gut? You mentioned that gut health is super important in perimenopause. But walk us down the path of that, how that helps with immune function and mood regulation and all the things.
So, yeah, I mean, I feel like, as I mentioned, when you have the estrogen decline during perimenopause, that really affects your gut motility and your microbiome. It can just throw off everything, right? So, bloating, irregularity, food sensitivities, but also, as you mentioned, or as was it a coach, did you say?
Yeah, strength and conditioning coach.
Okay, so we have found that 90% of our serotonin is made in the gut. That's like literally like your happiness, right? And your mood regulator. And so if that's all disrupted, then everything's disrupted, right? So, and then obviously absorption, if your gut health is off, you're not absorbing things correctly, then you're going to be missing very vital and crucial things. So there's all kinds of, I've had a number of patients in the past that have had like leaky gut, and all of these things happen when you're not paying attention to your gut health, or you're not trying to focus on, especially during perimenopause. This is something that I feel like is huge anyway. People are we're busy people. Like, we neglect our gut a lot of times, but it is important to try to be intentional with it if you can.
Yeah, what are some, because I know we kind of talked about like the supplements, like prebiotics, probiotics, that type of thing. But what are some foods that people should be eating to help with their gut health?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, like prebiotics, you can find a good amount in like garlic, onions, oats, apples. Those are great ones for prebiotics. Also, something huge, and this is like my favorite thing because I love like anything fermented. I don't know what it is. Like it's just like my favorite thing. So like sauerkraut, kefir. I tried to make my own kefir. It wasn't great, but kefir is great. Greek yogurt, kimchi. Kimchi is my favorite thing. So those are fantastic for your gut health. Anti-inflammatory, like we want to really think just in general with perimenopause, we want to kind of strive for anti-inflammatory, right? So olive oil, berries, leafy greens, turmeric, all of that kind of like stabilizes digestion, reduces your inflammation, improves your hormonal balance, and then it'll help with your perimenopausal symptoms.
Amazing. Okay, I've been like chomping at the bit to talk about dieting, our favorite topic, Farrah, or should I say anti-dieting. But whenever you're having, I think for so many women, you're having an unexplained weight gain, you're feeling insecure, and there is this desperation. You just don't feel good about yourself. And we've been trained our whole lives, and everybody says, well, just work out more, eat less. Work out more, eat less. But let's break down some of these diet trends because intermittent fasting is huge right now in general, but especially in women that are 40 plus. We're seeing like this huge increase in women wanting to do intermittent fasting. But is that really what's best for them?
No, and intermittent fasting is interesting because it is effective, right? But why is it effective? And we talked about this in the last podcast. It's effective because you're cutting out a chunk of time, right, during the day where you're not taking in calories. That's it. Everyone thinks it's this like very magic thing, that is just going to solve all of our problems. But really, you're just putting yourself, you're more likely to be in a caloric deficit. But oftentimes we do see with intermittent fasting that, we'll go so many hours without eating. And then obviously we've got the blood sugar that's dysregulated. And then you get to a point where your inhibitions are really low because you're so hungry and you really just don't care and you reach for whatever and you end up overeating and then kind of throwing yourself for a loop. So that does happen a lot with intermittent fasting. During perimenopause, as we kind of talked about, blood sugar regulation is huge. It's super important. So like I said, address it the same way I would with somebody that has insulin issues where, and some people don't. Some people that are in perimenopause actually don't experience blood sugar dysregulation. I would say more often than not, they do. So I just treat it the same way across the board. I'm like, let's try to eat throughout the day, get your protein up. Don't do the intermittent fasting because it can really just disrupt everything and make things harder. I see a lot of women that want to fast and like completely fast. And I know fasting sometimes has nothing to do with, weight, or sometimes it's a religious thing or, things like that. But when you're in perimenopause, it is not good to go that long without eating. It's just going to really disrupt everything that we talked about. So yeah, I think no on the intermittent fasting. I don't think it's a good idea.
Yeah, and I learned from Stacey Sims. I was listening to a podcast where Stacey Sims was talking, and she's talking about how women, their cortisol levels spike like 30 minutes after waking. And when we're fasting, we remain in that higher state of stress and elevated cortisol levels, which is not good for your body. So by eating within like 30 minutes, like you said earlier, and maybe max an hour, when we're eating in the morning, we're lowering those cortisol levels, getting our body out of that chronic stress state, and then our bodies function so much better throughout the day. And then she says, if you are wanting to intermittent fast, maybe, and I personally don't suggest, but maybe just stopping eating a little earlier in the evening around 6. And then, that way you're able to have a longer period without, and you can still eat first thing in the morning.
That's a great point. That's something that I was actually just telling one of my clients this morning, where I was just like, stop. I said 7, but she was telling me she usually wakes up around 7. So I'm like, stop eating at 7 and then eat again, when you wake up, and then that's 12 hours of fasting, So that I would say if that's what you want to do, then do it that way. I agree with you. I think it's just important to try to keep everything very consistent and balanced and try not to skip meals.
Yeah.
Intermittent fasting may be trendy, right? But I don't think your cortisol or your glucose, your insulin cares about trends.
Yeah,
So
it's very
I
true.
know I know intermittent fasting can work for men, but women are not just small men, right?
Right.
Stacey Sim says that too. But
I love that.
Farrah, I wanted to ask you: are there any other trendy things you see, or mistakes that women can make in perimenopause?
Yeah, I mean, I think just dieting in general, and that goes across the board with anything. But as I mentioned, I think perimenopause is just a time where we really have to be intentional about what we're doing. And I think dieting in general really just stresses us out. So, Darian just talked about what stress does for us and the cortisol, and that's obviously leads to belly fat, things like that. So let's not stress about dieting. Plus, nobody sticks to diets, right? The big one I see is low carb. Like people still, especially people our age, Darian, and
Mhm.
older, so like mid 30s and up, women are so afraid of carbs. And almost it's crazy. If I see that I have a person that is in that age group and they're coming to me and they want to lose weight, they'll start shaming themselves while they're talking to me about carbs, right? And they start talking to me about, yeah, it was really bad. Lately I've just been having all these carbs, and I automatically just want to undo that thought process. It's
Mhm.
so hard because it's been crammed down our throats. But honestly, that's a huge one, is like the low carb lifestyle. Like, let's not do that. We talked about that earlier. So that's a big one. A lot of women go towards keto because they've heard, and I can understand, right? I mean, keeping that blood sugar nice and stable all day, keto does that, but the longevity in keto just isn't there. People just don't stick to it. So I would say just throw away all of those gimmicky things that you're hearing and just eat intentionally, and don't restrict yourself. If you feel like having, a piece of cake, have a piece of cake. It's okay. It's not a big deal. Don't overdo it. Don't eat a whole cake. And if you won't want to eat a whole cake if you're like eating throughout the day and like you're actually paying attention to those hunger cues and having a high protein. Guarantee you won't want to eat a whole cake. So just, those kinds of things. Just don't listen to the fads and the trends.
Yes, ugh, keeping it simple, moderation, that is like how you stay sustainable long term. And that is what really allows you to be able to have those treats that you want because you're not doing that whole like binge
Yep.
restrict kind of rebounding all over the place. And I want women to really hear us when we say it's not about being thin, especially at this point. It's okay. Maybe you've put on a bit of weight. Hopefully, you've put on a bit of muscle and lean into that and go, hey, this is what's good for my body at this time of my life. And you can feel really proud of that. Okay, Farrah, can you tell us about alcohol? Because when you're in your 20s, you can drink alcohol consequence free pretty much. And
Yeah.
then as we get older, even now, if I have one drink, I'm not kidding, one, I am like I feel like crap. Like I almost instantly get a headache.
Yeah.
I have trouble sleeping. My
Mm-hmm.
gut is messed up. Like I will have constipation after drinking.
Mm.
Can you just kind of talk us through how is alcohol playing a role? Can women still drink during this time or what should they be thinking about?
I know it is so depressing. I on the 4th of July, Joey, you were asking me what, because I had mentioned in the meeting that we had that I didn't have kids. Our kids were going with their other parents, and so my husband and I, it was just going to be us. So we had some drinks and we hung out and watched, movies, and we're just super low key. But I felt crappy for a couple days. Like I couldn't just bounce back, and that was so depressing because yeah, I used to just be fine. I could like drink and be, great, go to the gym the next day or whatever. But yeah, alcohol, the older we get, and especially during perimenopause, it's not the best idea, and I know that's not what anybody wants to hear, but it messes with so many things. It disrupts your sleep, it messes with your cortisol like so much. It actually is like one of the biggest things that can throw off our cortisol, and cause like mood swings, and it messes with our periods, like heavy, irregular periods. Um, our liver isn't as efficient as we're going through perimenopause. And so that's probably why it takes longer for us to recover. So yeah, it stresses out our liver a little bit more. Should you not drink at all? In an ideal world, I would say, yeah, let's just not. But am I personally going to listen to that? Probably not. I'm going to have a drink every now and then, and I'm just going to try to be as cautious as possible and not overdo it. So, there's a lot of reasons for that. I mean, overdoing it with alcohol can cause all kinds of crazy side effects. But in order for me to feel great the next day, I try to limit it to 1 or 2 drinks. I'm trying to up my electrolytes like crazy. I'm just drinking water. I drink water every time I take a drink of whatever alcohol I'm drinking. And then I have electrolytes before bed, and then I have electrolytes in the morning. And I try to make sure that I have eaten and fueled properly. It still might throw you for a little bit of a loop. I don't know. What do you think, Darian? Like, give me your feedback.
I just am feeling like everything you said is right, especially sleep is always so vitally important. And like more and more, I'm feeling like sleep is number one. Your body cannot regulate properly if you're not sleeping. And like I said, if I have even 1 drink, my sleep is so messed up. And that means my body's not recovering. So I don't even know if it's so much the alcohol as it is the effects of not being able to sleep.
Yep.
And I think with everything, right, there's consequences to every action you take. And it's just deciding, is it worth this drink? Sometimes it probably is. It's fun, but a lot of times you go, is it worth me missing my whole next day?
Right.
For this 1 drink, because I will not feel good. I will have a horrible headache and, feel very dehydrated. And it might not just be 1 day. It might be, like you said, like you were messed up for days. And I have felt that before as well with even just 1 or 2 drinks. So it's just kind of weighing pros and cons. Good time now, bad time later, or, not do it and feel good.
Yeah.
Let's not forget, too, that alcohol is usually paired with not the best of nutrient-dense foods. I'll just throw that out there.
That's true.
That's a great one, because it does the same thing, where your inhibitions are lowered and you don't really care and you have crazy cravings, and it's one of those things. And I also hear a lot of people say, well, I sleep better when I drink. A lot of people that will have a drink before bed because they think that they sleep better, it's not what it seems, right? You're not actually getting that sleep, that restful sleep that your body needs to recover. It just can't happen if you've got alcohol in your system. So that's just something too, because I've heard a lot of people tell me that, well, no, I sleep great because I drink. I'm like, no, you're not sleeping great. So,
I love it. I know, Farrah, we could talk about so much more, but we do have to wrap up. I would truly love to have you back, because I know you wanted to dive in even deeper, and we could even talk about like what a day of eating might look like at some point. I would love to do that. And, for our listeners, ask us questions. What do you want to know from Farrah? Whether you're perimenopause or not, we definitely want to have you back, Farrah. So we'll gather up some questions for you to answer. But thank you so much. It was awesome. You have so much knowledge, and it was like just so great to talk to you again.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. I love coming on, so anytime. I'm here. So thanks again, and I appreciate you both.
Bye, Farrah.
Bye.
Thank you all so much for listening. We hope that you learned as much from Farrah as we did. I have a call to action for you all. Please write to us. Send us an email, send us a text, leave a comment, share with your friends. Just let us know what you think and what you want to hear from us. Also, go into our show notes, click the link to try Train Well for 14 days free and get matched with your very own personal trainer.
Remember, ladies, that nutrition is so powerful. Use it to your advantage. Become your best. We'll talk to you guys next time.